Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today I'm going to focus on a technique where we are going to print with stencils. So you kind of end up getting the opposite of what the stencil intended or is, the design of it. And so I've just picked three sort of really random, really different ones from my stash. The first one here is called Fairy Bubbles. This has a pretty delicate pattern and not much to the stencil. This one here is called Enjoy the Moment, the leaves one, and that one is pretty big and a little bit detailed. And then the middle one is the Supernova from Visible Image, this one here, and this has sort of more stencil and less in between. And I really just wanted to choose a different range of stencils, so no matter what you've got, you can give this a go. And remember that doing this is a way that we can stretch the use of our stencils really, really well. This gives a completely different look. Now I have chosen Twisted Citron, Peacock Feathers, and Cracked Pistachio. Now these colours would all work really nicely together. They would blend really nicely together even if they bled together a little bit. But it doesn't really matter because actually what we're focusing on for this technique is the ink that's left on the stencil, because we are going to print with the stencil. So for this you need a water reactive ink, and lots of the dye inks out there are water reactive. The Catherine Paula ones are, Simon Hurley ones are, the Distress inks, Distress Oxides, all of those are. Lots of the dye inks are water reactive, but I coloured in a lot of this one so that you could see the pattern in general. So that's really cool as is, and that's sort of the general look that you would get if you used the stencil. But we are going to take the ink that's on the stencil. I have a little just cheap and cheerful water bottle here. I can't find my fine mister one, my continuous mister, but this one works just fine. I give a really light spritz of water on it, and then I'm going to print this down, press this down onto a clear piece of paper. I like to take a sheet or two of paper towel, pop this down so that you can soak up anything so it doesn't mush into the cracks. I want it to soak up rather than spreading because I want a relatively clear print. Now I did miss the edges a little bit in this one. I think they haven't got enough water on them, but that is a good learning. But look at the gorgeous print that we get. So this is kind of a 2-for-1 deal, that you get the pattern that you would always have with the stencil, and then you actually get the reverse image of that, and we can print with them. So this is the Supernova one. I'm using some Wilted Violet, Salty Ocean, and Picked Raspberry. Just three random colours to give a good example. With this one, I'm not really trying to get the background perfect, so your blending does not need to be perfect at all. I really am just getting the ink on top of the stencil for this one. So you don't always have to have a 2-for-1. It's okay to just sort of aim for the stencil, and I'll show you that with the last one. And then I am going to make these into a card so that you can see what I would do with these. Now, even without much effort, there is a gorgeous stencil there on the left. But if we transfer it over to the right, add the paper towel once we've done the water to soak up anything that may seep through, and then just checking it's got all those little bits seeped up and they're not going to sort of dribble away when I pull up the stencil. And then once you pull up the stencil, and this is a really good print. I think that worked really, really well. The colours have all blended together nicely, and then I'm just going to let that one dry too. So pretty clear just for a print from a stencil. Now this one here, this is, as I said, it's called Enjoy the Moment. This is a 6 by 8 inch stencil. It's pretty big, and it obviously has words on it, and I don't really want the words because obviously they will be backwards. They'll be the mirror image of what we're creating here, and so I don't want the words. And you might think that it's going to be a problem, but actually I'm going to show you exactly how I deal with that. Now this one here, I'm going very quick and simple. Some Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn, and I'm actually, oh, that was a good save, I'm actually going to go directly onto the stencil. So this is quite good because it probably has less ink going through if you're not wanting the other image as well. And then I just sort of dot them around to make sure I've covered everything. I make sure I haven't covered the words because I don't want those printing, as I said. Give it a really nice, good light spritz, an even spritz all over, and then press this down where I think I want the print to sort of be, because as I said, this is a big stencil. It's a pretty good price. I think it was around $5 US or so, which is pretty good for a larger stencil. Really good quality, nice and thick, and this one is actually my favorite of all of them. So I hold it down, give it some even pressure, dab up anything that might be left, and then pull this one up. And this is a gorgeous print. I really love how you get a really clear print from just the stencil. So as I said, no matter whatever stencils that you have at home, you're able to give this a go. Now, this is the part where the words were, and all I'm doing is using a little bit of water, and then eventually I will actually dip my paintbrush into that leftover ink on the stencil, and I'm just going to kind of fade this out, and then we're going to use this to our advantage when we turn this into a card. Now, whilst I put these aside to dry for a little bit, I'm going to create my focal point, and I have some Stick It double-sided adhesive. I have the ladybug and leaf from Lawn Fawn, and then I'm going to make this my focal point of the card, the one with the leaves at least. This is pretty easy. I really do love this. It's super, super cute, and I am just going to, you can see I've got out some sort of, a few scrap pieces and a few bigger pieces of cardstock there. I am going to use the Stick It double-sided adhesive on the back of some of these bits, but you absolutely don't need to. I used this in a previous video where I just used liquid glue to put everything together, and that was perfect as well. I just cut out the bits that I need. I use as the right amount of Stick It to kind of cover the back there, and then run these all through my die cut machine. Now this little ladybug is pretty easy to put together. So you have his kind of base of his body, and then you stick the top layer on. These red bits here are great because they sort of go around all those black bits. They're all joined together, so you're not putting on all these tiny, tiny little dots, which is makes life a whole lot easier. I like that they've kind of thought that process through, and that someone doesn't want to be trying to put down 6 little tiny individual dots in every little place. Then I just use a slightly lighter, sort of like a grey or a mushroomy kind of colour for the inside bits of the ladybug and the head on the body, and then I put together the leaf. So it's the same thing, you have the base outline, and just because I put all that Stick It adhesive on the back makes it really easy just to pop everything together. I've gone with a dark cardstock for the base. Not that it really matters because it ends up getting covered, so you could probably do it in some scrap paper anyway. And then I'm going to alternate between the darker green and the lighter green and put together this leaf. You absolutely could just use one colour and do some gorgeous ink blending. I did some of that on the last one I made. Or you can do what I'm doing here and alternate, or you could use a dark outline and then have a lighter green on the inside. But most importantly, when you're cutting out a couple of these, it means that I absolutely can make a second leaf, and although I don't need this one, I am going to cut this out just round like that and then pop it in the back of my packaging just in case this happens to work really well for the next project that I do. Now, this is fun here because this is a matte cardstock, but on each reverse side it has a coordinating but darker or lighter, depending on which way you're looking, version of the same. So on the red, there's usually a dark red and a light red. And then on the pink, there's sort of a darker pink and then a light pink and a darker green and a lighter green, which makes it really good when you're trying to coordinate cardstocks and you just turn it over and use the other side. I need all of the little helpful bits and pieces I can get when it comes to matching things and making it coordinate. I cut down my little panel just a little bit, and you can still see I've got that little white area there in the bottom left hand corner, and we're going to use that to our advantage by popping the sentiment down there. It doesn't have to fit in there at all, but we're just going to take advantage of that white space. Now, I couldn't decide for a minute if I wanted that really big happy birthday sentiment or if I wanted a more contained, sort of smaller sentiment. And so I just take it out of the packaging and sit it on top, see what I think. I went for the smaller one in the end. I think both could have absolutely have worked. I'm going to stamp this in some Rainforest VersaFine clear ink. This stamps beautifully. I do love VersaFine clear inks. I have a whole video reviewing them and which ones I would recommend to get first. Just my personal opinion, of course, but why I love them so much, what you can do with them, their abilities. If you just look on my channel and search for VersaFine, I'm sure that will come up. I also have one for the Distress Oxides as well. Now, I left this little whoopsie in because I find it kind of funny. I was so distracted. I had a piece of string out that I wanted to wrap around here to help just sort of ground where the leaf was going to go, and I was just on another planet clearly and just popped it down onto my card front, but instead I ripped it off and then I added around the string that I wanted to, popped the rest up on some foam tape, had to get a new card base, but that's okay because I will still use I'll cut up the old card base and still be able to use that plenty. There are lots of places this leaf could go. I was debating where to have it come from, but I like it sort of popping out of that string the best. Because we used the stick-it adhesive, I was able to just peel off the backing, same with the ladybird, and we are good to go. So this is a really fun card to create. Didn't take me too long at all, and I really love that you can still see the print of the stencil in the background. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you have a play with your stencils and see what you can take a print of, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.